Hiya, I'm Elliot from Free Life Financial, and today I'm going to be explaining the 10 basic steps to purchasing your first property here in the UK. It's a very simple beginner's guide. I'm not going to be going into a lot of depth. I won't be explaining things like whether you would be liable to pay stamp duty or how to negotiate for properties, etc. I'm just going to explain the 10 basic steps to getting you in your first home. If you're using a mortgage advisor, your mortgage advisor will take care of a lot of these steps for you. If you're going it alone, the 10 basic steps will still be exactly the same. So let's have a look at the 10 steps to purchasing a property in the UK. The first step to purchasing a property is to work out the different costs of buying. Now, the biggest cost of buying a property is the deposit. When you purchase a property with a mortgage, you will be required to put down at least 5% of the purchase price yourself, and you would borrow the rest from the lender. So you would need to work out how much that could be. What kind of property are you looking at purchasing? What price ranges are you looking within? And how much would you need to pay for your deposit? On top of that, there are other costs involved. You will need a solicitor or a conveyancer to take care of the legal side of purchasing a property. Working out how much a conveyancer can cost is difficult. It does depend on whereabouts in the UK you are and what the prices are like in that area, as well as how much you are purchasing a property for. Some solicitors charge more for more expensive properties. You will also need to find out whether you are liable to pay stamp duty land tax. Stamp duty is a tax that you pay when you purchase a property in the UK. When you are a first-time buyer, you do get some benefits. For example, if you're a first-time buyer in England and you purchase your first property for less than £300,000, you will not need to pay stamp duty. Other than your deposit, solicitor costs, mortgage broker costs, and stamp duty, you'll really just need to consider the general costs of moving home. Are you going to need to buy furniture? Are you going to need to use a removal company, etc.? Make sure you're not moving into a property with absolutely zero cash, because you might find yourself really needing to buy some things for your new home and having no money to do so. Once you've confirmed that you do have enough cash to cover the costs of buying, the next step would be to work out how much you could borrow. Now, if you're using a mortgage broker, of course your mortgage broker would be able to work that out for you, but if not, there are online calculators. However, you will need to be careful. There are a couple of potential stumbling blocks. For example, different types of income. If you get shift allowance, overtime, or if you have a second job, different lenders will have different rules about whether they can use that income or how much of that income they could take into consideration. For example, some lenders might look at your last 3 months overtime, annualize it as an average and say, yes, that's your income, whereas some lenders will say, we'll annualize it and take 50%, and some lenders will just say, no, sorry, we don't accept that type of income. So that brings us on nicely to step 3. The third step to purchasing a property is to get a decision in principle, also known as an agreement in principle or a mortgage in principle. And this is essentially a pre-approval from the lender. It's the lender saying, yes, based on the information you've given us, we would consider giving you a mortgage of this amount. It is not a guaranteed mortgage offer, it is just an indication. When you are doing a decision in principle, you'll get asked more questions than you did when you were just doing an affordability calculator online. They'll ask more information and you'll input the different types of income. For example, if there is overtime, shift allowance or anything like that, you'll input that information. They'll also do a credit check. So the decision you get will be based on all of the information you have input. If you are using a mortgage advisor, the advisor will confirm with the lender what types of income can be used and what their policy rules are in relation to your particular circumstances. So usually when your mortgage broker gets you a decision in principle, they'll already have quite a good idea that you would probably be accepted for that mortgage if you applied. Once you have a decision in principle, feel free to start viewing properties. You can arrange viewings with estate agents, and I can't stress enough, try to wait until you get a decision in principle before you actually take this next step. The worst thing is when you fall in love with a property and then you speak to somebody about the mortgage and it turns out you can't afford that property because you can't get the mortgage. Once you have found a property, you'll want to get an offer accepted. Again, if you're using a mortgage advisor, your mortgage advisor might help with this side of things, with the negotiation side, or you might prefer to do that alone. That's when you would call the estate agent and you would make an offer and hopefully get your offer accepted. Once your offer has been accepted, it's time to apply for your mortgage. We know which property it is, and we know how much we are buying it for, and we know what mortgage we require. Now, it's at this stage that you would also find a solicitor, but usually a solicitor or conveyancer would be recommended by the estate agent or your mortgage advisor. But if you have a preferred one or one that friends and family have recommended, then absolutely, it's usually a good idea to compare different quotes. When you apply for the mortgage, the lender will ask you the solicitor details, also the estate agency details, and usually some more details about yourself, as well as asking you to provide some documents to show your income, outgoings, etc. Once they've checked the documents that you have sent and they are happy with all the information you've provided, the lender will then do a valuation of the property. This is where the lender wants to check that the property is worth as much as you are paying for it. The reason for this is that that property is their security. If you stop paying for your mortgage, they can repossess that property and sell it to get back their money. So if you were purchasing a property for £100,000, they will want to confirm that that property is worth £100,000 before they agree to give you the mortgage on it. You may decide you want to pay extra for somebody to do some checks for you. The basic mortgage valuation is designed to protect the lender. It's not really designed to protect you as the buyer. So you may want to spend some money on something called a survey. This is where somebody will go to the property to perform some checks and fill out a report on the property. And this is to protect you. They'll be looking for things such as damp, woodworm, or various other issues that can arise with properties. Whether you decide to pay extra for one of these surveys or not will depend on your risk appetite and on the property itself. If it's a brand new property, you might decide that you feel like it's quite safe to go ahead without getting somebody to check it, whereas if it's a 100-year-old property, generally it's worth paying somebody to go and have these checks done. My advice is that if you were unsure, well, it's probably worth paying the money to have a survey done, because it is probably one of the biggest financial decisions you'll ever make, purchasing a property. So paying a few £100 for a bit of an upgrade to get that extra security is probably worth it. As I say, there are different levels of survey that you can get. It depends again on the property. Your most basic level is what they call a home buyer's report or a home buyer's survey, but there are more in-depth ones that you can get to, especially if it is an older property or in poor condition. You can have a chat to your mortgage advisor and to your friends and family to get advice, but really this decision has to be yours. You need to decide whether you want to take the risk or whether you would rather pay the money and double check that everything is in order. Once the lender has checked your application, they've checked your documents, they've checked that everything is as you said it was on the application, they've looked at your pay slips to confirm your salary, and they've done a valuation of the property and they are happy with that, the next step is for you to get your mortgage offer. The mortgage offer is when the lender says, yes, you have been approved, your application is accepted. This is one of the most exciting times in the property purchase process, because you know you've got the mortgage, you've been accepted, and things are looking pretty good. And from here, it's really just waiting for the legal work. So the next step is to prepare for exchange of contracts. So preparing is really reading the reports that the solicitor sends you, filling out the information that they request. Now, some of the documents that you receive from your solicitor or your conveyancer will be quite long and sometimes a little bit boring, but there is no way to get around it. You need to just sit down and read these documents, because as I say, it is one of the biggest financial decisions you're going to make. You need to make sure you are aware of everything the solicitor wants to tell you about that property. Once the solicitor has completed their due diligence and you have filled out the necessary paperwork, etc., the next step is to exchange contracts. Now, this is where you become legally committed to purchase the property, so there's no turning back. If you are sure you want to purchase that property, then this is a very exciting time. If you are not sure you want to purchase the property, it's probably a good idea to put the brakes on. But usually at this stage, you've decided you definitely want to purchase that property. So it's a very exciting time because you become legally committed to purchase the property and the seller becomes legally committed to sell it to you. The next step after that is completion. Completion, well, this is where you get the keys. It's yours. You move in. Often this will be on the same day as exchange of contracts. In some cases though, you might exchange contracts a few weeks before you actually move into the property. It just depends on the circumstances. But the final step, step 10, is completion. You go to the estate agent, you get your keys, and you start moving in. And that is the 10 basic steps to purchasing a property. Now, you're probably thinking that that's a little bit less complicated than you expected. It is actually quite simple when you look at it set out like this. However, it is a long process. It can take 2, 3, 4 months or more to actually complete the purchase from making that initial offer to the estate agent. How long it takes completely depends on the situation, whether you hit speed bumps along the way, whether there's a chain involved, meaning that one person has to sell a property before they can move and the next person also has to sell their property before they can move. So you never really know how long it's going to take, but do be prepared for it to take a long time, 2, 3, 4 months, because that's very common. However, when you do move in, finally, I wish you the best of luck and I wish you many happy years in your new home.